The movie sets the scene in 2015, where an army of aliens, known as Mimics, land in Europe and launch an attack on Germany. This assault devastates the major countries across Europe and results in the deaths of millions of people. Every news channel shifts its focus to the arrival of Mimics, whose mission is to extinct humans from the Earth and establish their civilization. The whole world's army decides to join together, and they construct a mechanical suit known as the exosuit. The soldier wears this robotic suit as a weapon to combat the fight against aliens. Under the command of Rita, humanity defeats the Mimics in Verdun. Another battle is imminent in France soon. General Brigham, the head of humanity's United Defense, calls William Cage, an officer who deals with public affairs and is also an advertising executive for some work. He informs Cage about the war between humans and aliens, which could happen in France any day. General Brigham orders him to go there and record the fight with the help of his camera crew. He tells him to propagate the information to the general public so they can be aware of the events and inform them about the current situation. Cage asserts that he's an ordinary man who knows nothing about war and battles. He refuses to accept General Brigham's idea. General Brigham then informs him that he has talked with his senior about this idea, and now Cage must accompany the soldiers. Cage becomes angry. He questions General Brigham. He asks him that, in battles, millions of people lose their lives. Who is responsible for this? In my eyes, the responsibility lies with you. General Brigham becomes angry when he hears this. He calls his officers and arrests Cage. The next day, Cage wakes up in handcuffs at Heathrow military base camp. They label him a deserter and assign him to combat duty. There, he meets Sergeant Farrell. Farrell informs him that he's there to fight at France's war front. Cage tells him he's not a soldier and can't fight with the aliens, explaining there has been a misunderstanding between him and General Brigham. He asks to talk to the general commander so that he can go back. Farrell ignores his request and brings him to the camp, where he meets Jay's squad. It is the lowest rank squad, which has the least skilled soldiers. Without Cage's consent, he has to be a part of Jay's squad. The following day, everyone wears an exosuit to combat Mimics. Then, Griff, a member of Jay's squad, comes towards Cage. He instructs Cage to fight with bravery and keep his guns safe. That time, Cage doesn't grasp his point. Shortly, the plane takes off towards the war zone. General Farrell rallies everyone for the war. He instructs every soldier to attack Mimics, fight with courage, and defeat them with bravery. However, a sudden blast occurs, which causes the plane to crash. The soldiers barely manage to land on the ground, but no one survives the Mimics' attacks. They begin to die one by one. Cage tries to use a gun, but his suit has a safety lock that prevents him from firing. Suddenly, a Mimic arrives, who is black and orange. He starts to kill the soldiers one by one. After much effort, Cage's gun finally activates, and he kills the Mimic. Soon after, another Mimic appears, known as an Alpha Mimic, which is black and blue. It notices Cage and begins to move towards him. As the Mimic approaches, Cage's gun ceases to function again. Cage spots a nearby soldier's bomb. He grabs the bomb and blasts the Alpha Mimic. The Alpha Mimic's blood falls onto the Cage's face. It causes Cage to die. However, Cage wakes up again at the same spot. He becomes anxious about how he gets there and how he's still alive. Soon, all the events of the previous battle begin to repeat. Sergeant Farrell arrives and informs him that you're here for the combat against aliens. Farrell again orders him to be ready for the battle. He assigns Cage to the Jay's squad the same way as before. The next day, everyone is at war, and suddenly Cage's eyes fall on Rita, who kills Mimics one by one. Cage approaches her so that she can save him. However, when he comes near her, Rita takes his suit's battery and leaves him on the battlefield to die. Soon, another Mimic arrives and takes his life, restarting the chain of events once again. He again wakes up in Heathrow after the Mimics take his life. But this time, Cage knows everything. He goes to Sergeant Farrell and tells him that he has experienced death in yesterday's war. But when he wakes up, things start to repeat. He informs Farrell that he knows everything. He knows he is about to take him to the J squad and assigns him there. Despite this, Sergeant Farrell doesn't believe him. So, Cage begins to call the names of J squad members: Griff, Nance, Ford, Kimmel, and Kuntz. He knows their names because he's been there in the war with them. Nonetheless, Farrell doesn't believe him. He closes Cage's mouth with duct tape and sends him back to the war again. The same thing happens to Cage again. He finds himself in the war, but now he knows about the attack in advance. Cage has learned about the Mimics' movement and tactics because of his prior encounters. Cage notices Rita, and he realizes that she's in trouble. He goes towards her. He saves Rita and then urges her to go away from the plane before the blast occurs. At that moment, Rita realizes that Cage possesses some unique powers, so she instructs him to meet her when the time loop starts again. Soon after, they both die in a plane blast. The next day, Cage wakes up again in Heathrow. This time, however, he decides to play it cool. He avoids overreaction, and instead, he looks for an escape. When Sergeant Farrell approaches to recruit him in Jay's squad, Cage keeps his cool. However, he searches for a way out. When he tries to slip away, a truck crushes him, and he dies once more. But Cage doesn't give up. He learns about the truck timings in the next time loop, maintains his distance from the truck, and successfully crosses it. He finally meets Rita Vitrasky, the legendary commander with ironclad security. Despite the heavy protocol, Cage breaks the rules and manages to greet her. He reveals their past encounter. Rita quickly recognizes the familiar power within Cage that she has experienced before. Rita instructs him not to discuss this with anyone else. Otherwise, people label him crazy and expel him from the facility. Then, she takes Cage to Dr. Carter, who studies mimics and alien technology. He explains that there are 3 types of aliens. Firstly, there are ordinary mimics that are smaller but challenging. Then, there are alpha mimics who are larger and more intelligent. Lastly, there are omega mimics, acting as the brains of mimics. The aliens share a nervous system. Whenever an alpha mimic dies, the omega restarts the day because the aliens do not want humans to defeat them. Dr. Carter explains the possibility of acquiring the aliens' time loop power through blood transfusion. He adds that Cage had gotten this ability when an alpha mimic died, and his blood splashed over his face, transfusing the alpha's blood into his blood. So, he can now restart the day after his death. He tells Cage that Rita has this ability in Verdun's war. However, she has now lost it due to a human blood transfusion. Cage asks why, if they possess the power to loop time, they do nothing when we defeat them in the war in Verdun. Then Rita explains that it is their trap, and mimics want humans to think they can win, so that they bring all human forces on the ground in the next war, and invade us all at once. Dr. Carter tells Cage more about the mimics. He says mimics are aliens from different planets aiming to take over the Earth. Rita informs Cage that mimics serve as the hive mind and share information. Dr. Carter informs Cage that Omega's power to reset the time is compromised due to Cage killing the Alpha and taking his power. They ask Cage for help. Cage questions how he can help them when he lacks basic combat skills. Rita informs him that from now on, she will train him. She instructs Cage that he has to fight with them every day, die every day, and report everything he experiences until they uncover the actual location of the Omega Mimic. Without his assistance, they cannot locate the Omega Mimic. Cage agrees. After that, Rita begins to train Cage, and training is incredibly tough. He fractures his arm multiple times, but whenever he gets hurt, Rita kills him. It's strange, but it allows him to wake up again, as if nothing has happened. He has Alpha Mimic's blood, which makes him an Alpha. Now, he has the power to repeat the day after he dies. But if Cage gets hurt and loses his blood, he loses his powers too. That's why Rita kills him whenever he's hurt, so he can use his power and wake up again to repeat it all over again. Shortly after, he becomes ready for the war. Cage has a dream in which he envisions the location of the Omega Mimic. Cage rushes to Rita and Dr. Carter and excitedly shares that he knows the location of Omega Mimics, and they are in a large dam known as Bavarian Alps Dam. He says he can't understand the inscription because it's in German, but lots of snow surrounds it. Then Rita and Cage go to war and try to figure out how to escape from the war and go to the dam location. On the battlefield, Cage is informed that mimics have attacked London. So, the next day, Cage escapes from Jay's squad and heads to London before the war begins. He hears strange noises. When he goes outside, he sees many mimics have already attacked London. They notice Cage and ultimately kill him. Cage wakes up once more. He realizes that the aliens counterattack in London and France whenever he attacks the dam. Cage and Rita learn how to survive the battle, and they manage to reach the Bavarian Alps Dam, which Cage sees in his dream. Rows of cars line the street in front of them. Cage instructs Rita to head to the white truck while he heads to the blue car. He explains that if any vehicle starts, they head on it and use it to escape. However, before they can act, mimics attack them. Rita and Cage fight fiercely against mimics inside a white truck. Suddenly, another mimic manages to enter their vehicle, but Cage bravely kills it and takes it down. After the fight, they continue their journey, but run out of fuel in their truck. They find an empty house nearby and go inside for shelter, but nobody's there. However, they see a helicopter nearby. They try their best to find the helicopter's key, but fail. Soon after, Cage sees a fully fueled car in the garage. He urges Rita to take that car and drive it. However, Rita points out that the dam is in Germany and a car isn't enough to go there. Disappointed, Cage decides to make coffee for Rita. Rita surprisingly asks Cage how he finds the coffee. Cage remains silent and doesn't reply to her. He puts 3 spoons of sugar into her mug. Rita realizes that he has come here before, and she asks him how many times he has come here. Cage tells him they have often come here, but fail to cross the village every time. Cage and Rita choose another approach. This time, they search for the device that Carter has constructed. It is a unique device known as a transponder. He explains that when we attach this device to an alpha alien, it reveals the exact location of the Omega. Cage and Rita then report to the Ministry of Defense, where they begin their search for the device, but initially fail. However, they finally get it from General Brigham. As Cage is an alpha, he puts the device under his leg to activate it. The device uncovers that Omega hides himself under the Louvre Pyramid in Paris. Suddenly, they are ambushed by other soldiers. However, before they can escape, they get into an accident and pass out. Unlike before, Rita fails to kill him, and he begins to suffer from sufficient blood loss. Cage manages to survive through a blood transfusion, but as a consequence, he loses his power to restart the day. Rita and Cage return to Heathrow. They convince Jay's squad to help them destroy the Omega. They instruct the team not to kill Alpha because if they do, Omega can reset the day, and he becomes aware of the attack on the Louvre in advance. Squad members sacrifice themselves so that Cage and Rita reach the Louvre. Inside the Louvre, they are attacked by an Alpha Mimic. Rita distracts it while Cage approaches the Omega. However, the Alpha Mimic takes her life. The Alpha Mimic then goes to kill Cage, but before its attack, Cage sets off a grenade belt. The blast blows up Omega's core and stops all other mimics. Cage also gets caught in it, but he does not die. He absorbs Omega's blood, and the next day, he wakes up inside the helicopter. He sees General Brigham addressing the nation on TV. General Brigham briefs that a power surge in Paris mysteriously stops the mimic's activity. Cage goes to Heathrow, where he meets his squad mates. Then, he meets Rita, who does not recognize him. She asks what he wants. As before, he responds with a smirk and a laugh.
Thank you all for your support. If you want to watch more content like this, like and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments section, and I will see you next time. Stay curious.